are probably still going to trickle in, but yeah, I wanted to welcome everyone. Thanks. As Sean said, I know it's a little bit late. It's at the end of the work day or just later in the day, so appreciate you joining. My name is Hannah Greenberg. We did this last year, but for those of you who haven't met me, I'm on the City of San Jose's Climate Smart Team and Environmental Services. And this webinar is being brought to you in partnership with Redwood Energy and the electrification experts on that team, including Sean Armstrong, and with the Climate Smart team, the city's climate action planning team. So really quick background, I'll kind of speed through this, but Climate Smart San Jose is the city's climate action framework, and it was passed back in 2018. It outlines strategies for San Jose to address climate change and to create a healthier and more sustainable living environment. And yeah, accelerating those goals that are outlined in that climate smart framework. San Jose set even more ambitious targets for achieving net zero emissions by creating what we call the pathway to carbon neutrality by 2030. And one big strategy that will help us achieve our goals. Sorry?
Oh. I was just cheering you on. It's such a huge ambition, like a 2030 carbon neutrality. Is yes.
Yes, it is. It is ambitious. We're doing it. We're working towards it. But yeah, one of the big strategies that will help us achieve these goals is to switch from gas to electric in our homes. So as I said, we partnered with Redwood Energy again for a second time to put on this series of informational webinars that are supposed to be discussion based. So we really encourage folks to post their questions and raise their hands whenever they want. We'll call on you and try to address questions throughout the webinar as they come up. And just before I passed over to Sean, I wanted to cover a couple of housekeeping rules. So first is a reminder that the webinar is being recorded. I don't think any of you should have your cameras on, but there was a disclaimer, I think, when you entered the webinar. And if you are concerned about the recording, you can leave and we'll have this as a recorded version. But I hope you are not concerned about it. Please stay on. But anyway, so this is a Zoom webinar. Also, it's a little different than a typical Zoom meeting. So there's a Q&A function, but there isn't a chat function. But whenever you have questions, if you see at the bottom of your screen, there should be an option that says Q&A. You can enter questions whenever you want. All of the panelists up here will be able to see them, and we'll try to address them as they come. You can also raise your hand. You have an option to raise your hand at the bottom of your Zoom window as well. So if you want to answer or ask your question out loud, raise your hand. We'll call on you. And again, questions will be taken throughout the webinar.
Sorry. Pardon, I just bumped my screen there. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. And yeah, I see that we have a question. Will this recording be available for us later? Yes, we're going to be recording all of our webinars. And also this is the first of a series of 5 webinars that we're doing this year. We're going to be recording all of them, and we'll post those to our webpage and share it with attendees once it's ready. So Sean, I will pass it over to you now.
Thank you, Hannah. And thank you, Jasmine, and thank you, Jessie. Jessie Lee here is part of my team, and she's really good at setting up slide decks, and like among the many other skills and things she does, that's a talent of hers, it seems, which is great because it's something I love to do. And I'm like, oh, someone to do this with. So yeah, let's go into this. The Ask Sean show. I want to thank Tristan, who branded this show. She's an activist down for the Climate Reality Project in Irvine and Orange County. And that's where this came from, this idea that we would have sort of like Click and Clack on NPR. That's a show I always loved. And also Calling All Pets from Wisconsin, because I'm from Wisconsin. And so anyway, I'm going to give a quick, like, who am I? Why would I be the person that would explain things to you? So back in 1995, I came west from Wisconsin on a train, sight unseen, because I'd seen a tiny little black and white picture of this house, and I thought it was actually dorm housing, upper right-hand corner. But it was a demonstration house on campus where 3 students a year live in it to sort of live the experience of the height of sustainability they can pull off that year. And I got to do that in 1999. And it was a humongous changing experience for me. Sort of my introduction to building science. I'd always been a scientist ever since I was a little kid. Loved science, and I went on to become a high school science teacher. But I like you asking questions. I think that's how classes are supposed to be functional. And like when you have a paid teacher, they're supposed to ask and they're supposed to answer the questions you ask. You know? So I'm here for that. This is a professional experience. Please, if you have any questions. But I also want to raise a family and buy some land and have like that organic farming experience that I've been raised in. So I went into working in affordable housing and specifically in zero net energy affordable housing, like this next picture down here. These are one of my first, the first successful net positive housing development in our nation in 2014. It was 26 houses, and all 26 of them produced more electricity than they consumed with the solar arrays on the roof. And these adorable little low-income senior housing, subsidized senior housing. So shout out to Roger, the solar installer, who also put in early EV chargers back in 2014. And one of the people got an EV specifically so they could drive around, right, and charge for free there. Worked out great to sort of pioneer some transitioning low-income household getting EVs. Something we work on now to this very day in my company. Since 2011, Redwood Energy has my partner Michael Winkler and I, and now we have 16 staff, I think. We are working on not only helping affordable housing developers around the nation do zero net energy, all electric, 100% solar or more developments, now, often now with batteries, and most recently, excitingly, using vehicles as the backup batteries with bidirectional EVs like Kias, for instance, and Tesla says they're going to, but they've also been talking about that for way too long. Instead, real folks are doing it. Kia and Volkswagen and BMW, and there's a whole bunch. Jesse actually did a bunch of research on it. It's just pretty much everybody has announced they're going to make their EV car available as a battery, both to the grid and to the home. So on the lower left-hand corner, this is my house, cute little thing up here in Arcata, California, where I've got some land and a little farm and some awesome little kids. And now I'm going to tell you some stories, or more stories, I should say. So the story of heat pumps, it starts with a guy in Australia who gets some ether on his hands when he's cleaning the type keys. That he's a printing press guy, and he's like, God, it's so cold on my hand. And he's like, I wonder if I could use this liquid to make ice. And so these early machines you see on the lower left-hand side, the machine that he made is immediately used to make ice specifically for Australian breweries. Also, then it started getting used to ship meat long distances. This technology, which was called the heat pump, it's also been called an air conditioner. It's been called an ice maker. It's been called a dehumidifier. It is a vapor compression cycle. It's basically when something vaporizes, and then if you can get that vapor to condense, usually you have to compress it, essentially, physically like squeeze it. And you go through like a little thing that spins, and as it goes through the thing, it spins, it gets squished, because that thing that's spinning is not a round thing, but kind of an oval thing, and it squishes at one part of the process, and that makes it a liquid again. And then it goes back and then it evaporates and makes things cold. And then so anyway, this process of evaporation and then compression to condense it into liquid again can be done with all sorts of things. You see it with water, of course, but done with oils that boil at low temperatures, like boiling on your hand. Ooh, I even have a little here. I want to show you this. Okay, I ordered this to try to show people. Very delicate. Every time I give it to one of my kids, they break one. So now I have it just like hidden. I'm gonna turn off my blur here so you can see what I'm holding in my hand. This is a good moment for anyone who's like not in front of the computer. Come over to the computer just for a second so you can see this. If you're just listening to my voice, so this is a liquid, right? It looks like water, but it's not, because when I put my hand around it, I can immediately boil it. You see that? And I have warm hands. I've boiled it already. Like that boiled all the liquid that was in there. And I can kind of boil it in reverse up here on top of it, holding the ball on top. This is a vapor compression cycle. Well, not so much compression, but it's a vapor and condensation cycle. I'm boiling it, it's making it appear, I can turn it around. There's liquid and there's gas in there. So this little thing is an example of how people have used liquids that boil at different temperatures, because every liquid boils at a different temperature, to make ice. That was the first and most important thing. Keep the beer cold. So Anheuser-Busch is that lower left-hand corner. On the right-hand side, you can see some women working during World War One when all the men were gone. And finally, women got a whole bunch of working opportunities. Get out of the house, have a life, you know? So they're delivering ice. That's the old way. People have ice boxes, right? And the heat pumps. We're going to talk about heat pumps today. Is the phrase I'm going to use of all the different euphemisms slash different technical jargon for doing the same using the same process for different jobs. I'm going to call them heat pumps. Okay. You just saw me heating something, kind of pumping a liquid up, but you can see that in the 1930s, 90% of people who lived in the cities had electricity, and 90% of the people who lived in the country didn't in the United States. And the alphabet soup of agencies that was made during the Depression, one of them was the Rural Electrification Administration, which was huge. It electrified 90% of, or like rural, oh, yeah, you took 10% and took it all the way to 100% in rural areas. And it was about 60% of our country they're responsible for electrifying, getting the power poles up, running the wires, and getting people all these services that they would advertise with these awesome, 1930s era graphics. You get running water. Isn't that nice? um, and light and radios, all the fun stuff, the things we want today. And you don't have to do this thing of like boiling water, getting it hot, using a paddle, beating down your laundry in there, and then potentially rubbing it. I had to do that like little washboards and things to get the stains out. Did that in Honduras for a summer. It was amazingly hard work, and I was so respectful. I of the people who did it for me. Eventually, I hired it to be out a couple of times. I did it myself, but a couple of times I hired people, and theirs is so much better than theirs. Came back clean and white and nice. I sucked at it, and I worked so hard. So electricity brings so many conveniences, and there's essentially been a nonstop electrification of things process in the United States. But there's been periods of time where it accelerated, where when people got electricity and there was like certain technological innovations that used electricity, like heat pumps, like the things that make ice, um, where it was like electricity being brought to the masses and then some key technologies and innovations. And our country's been great at inventing new things. This is something America is well known for around the world, investing in research and inventing new things. So down here we have the nuclear industry, the brand new nuclear industry of the 1950s. General Electric and Westinghouse were making nuclear power plants. Hire Ronald Reagan. He's just retired. His last movie was not that great. He co-starred with a chimpanzee, literally. So he's kind of retired, and he moved into becoming the president of the Actors Union. So it's like he's getting into, his 50s, and he's got new professional jobs. He's not the leading man on the horse that he once was. Well, he now learns how to talk to people because he gets on a train and he visits every single nuclear power plant that opens up over the country for the next 10 years to give a speech. He lives in a mansion that he's been given, essentially electrified, with an electrified swimming pool up here that shows off all the things that can be done with electricity. And he gets to invite all the stars of Hollywood to come to his #1 television show, the General Electric Theater, on Sunday nights. All the stars that show up, and I mean everyone, the Groucho, the Marx Brothers, or the people who played like vampires, Bela Lugosi, or all the folks down here, Sammy Davis Jr. and James Dean and Reed Moreno and Judy Garland, and all of them, all of them showed up for the television show on Sunday. It's like Saturday Night Live, basically. They did live theater. So it wasn't improv, but it was like, whoa, you get to see your star doing your cool little piece of theater. That's one of the first things that James Dean did, is he showed up and did that show, and he became an even bigger star. So Ronald Reagan leads this popular campaign to get the electrical code changed. No joke. And it succeeded. The whole electrify everything movement. And I have lots of memorabilia around here. Just like, I don't know, like a paper clip here that's got the stamp on it, or there's like coins and my keychain, all these things that have this little symbol of live better electrically. That essentially Live Better Electrically was this code for like, we need to make sure that everyone's home can be all electric. And whoopsie, that was not intentional. I was trying to blur my background again. Little dignity here. So you have to see all my coats and jackets hung up. So from 1947 to 59, every house got 60 amps at 240 volts. So that's a certain amount of current, 60 amps, at a certain voltage, the amount of power it can deliver. These two things, you don't have to memorize that, but these are technical phrases that you'll bump into a few times around here. Basically, all the power delivered to your house is always 240 volt. Big buildings like mills and things with huge amounts of machinery, they might get 360 volt, or they might get 480 volt. But everyone's house gets 240 volt, and it gets two wires of it, essentially 120 volt, and those two wires are now given to all the circuits in your house, except some that are still 240 volt, like your dryer. So that was the deal. Every house got a 60 amp 240 volt service, which is the wire that comes down. But in 1962, after this successful television show effort with a jingle, Live Better Electrically, they got 100 amps, which is enough for an all-electric home in the 1960s, and it's enough for an all-electric home today. It's one of the technical things we're going to talk about today. Now, I see a Q&A there. Sunny, you ask, or say, hi, Sean. Hi, Sunny. One, will electric panel upgrades to 200 amps be qualified as a third tier measure? I'm not sure what a third tier measure is. Maybe
Sean,
yes.
this is I'll just
Thank
interrupt
you.
for a second. This is a
Please.
question about the city's new Electric Home San Jose program. And Sunny, I'm in touch with my colleague who's working on the program. They said they're gonna email you with a response, but maybe later on I can address this question so that once we get to that slide, which is coming up, we'll have a little more information on incentives and rebates in the coming slides, but I can address this later on. But yeah, someone's also getting in touch with you over email about this.
Okay. We'll find out soon. And the second thing you say is, I'm getting an electric dryer for my house. Cool. I didn't need to hire a contractor to help me install it. No, it's just an appliance. So that's one of the nice things is that dryers and stoves, you don't need to hire anyone to put those in. Gas stoves, you should have a professional, but technically you can just hook it up yourself as I mean, you shouldn't. It's dangerous and such, but you can, or you're allowed to. That's the nature of these appliances. So dryers and stoves. And what's different is that water heaters and space heating systems, you don't have to hire a contractor. You can do everything you want on your own house. That's the rules. You have to get a building permit, but you can do it yourself always. It's your house. Now, how would I apply for the first tier measure incentive? We'll find out in a little while because I don't know myself, but Hannah does, and we're going to talk about it all with everyone with a specific slide that gets it all laid out. And do you need a permit for it? You don't get permits for dryers, but you get permits for wiring 240 volt to a dryer. Though if it's new electricity delivered, yes, you're supposed to get a building permit for that. Also new gas, of course. But if electricity is there, then you don't. And that's one of the reasons I recommend that people get dryers that are 120 volt, because all of the outlets around the house are 120 volt. You don't have to rewire. You just get a 120 volt. There's lots of different kinds. Some of them are slow, some are fast, some are small, some are big, some are cheap, some are expensive. Take your pick. But you don't have to rewire, and you don't have to get a building permit for rewiring, and you don't have to delay or find a contractor if you go with the existing wiring in your home. So that is a big insight for everyone. Stick with the wiring that you have if you possibly can. It saves a bunch of time and money. Okay, story time again. So Ronald Reagan now becomes governor. He's become famous nationally in a more significant way than he'd been before. He's on everyone's TV #1 show, Sunday nights. And he leverages that to become governor. His wife as well. Oh my gosh, what's Ronald Reagan's wife's name? Nancy Reagan. Thank you. So Nancy, who also had significant political ambitions, this is a power couple and always were, and that was the nature of it. So I just want to say that's how things were. So they come into the governorship. He is the governor, and The air in California was then the filthiest air in the nation and is today the filthiest air in the nation. We have the number one worst air quality, and it is because of all of our gas power plants, previously coal power plants, oil power plants, all of our buildings. Our buildings equal the amount of gas burnt in buildings, the pollution from it equals the amount of pollution that's coming from all of our gas power plants that are still burning in California that we're slowly shutting down. And thank you, San Jose, for your leadership in getting 100% clean energy delivered to San Jose, which is right now is hydropower, batteries. Batteries are big now in California. Number one source of power in the evening is solar-filled batteries. Anyway, all this stuff is because all this technological stuff I love geeking out on is because these laws were passed. These are the first in the nation laws because we had the worst problems. And Governor Reagan went to work on this to try to get clean power. Be clear, he was always about clean power. I did not agree with many of his different policies, and he was a rank racist, absolutely unapologetic, public about that. I'm not telling anyone something they don't know. But he was not necessarily alone in that terrible, broken way of thinking at the time. He did pass some of the most consequential environmental laws of our country, and that is what we're talking about tonight. So 1967, the California Fuel Efficiency Standards, our Air Quality Act, this is why we still get to have electric car incentives in our state. This is why the California Air Resources Board exists. Because in 1970, when the Federal Clean Air Act that governs all other 49 states passed, we got an exemption because Reagan and Nixon and my mom stopped pushing me out when I was being born to avoid being born on Nixon's birthday. Nixon's birthday is January 9th, and I am born at 12:02 a.m. on January 10th. So just to let you know where the politics of my mom's was thinking she was not a supporter of that war. So but they worked something out, the two of them. In 1974, we also passed the Energy Resources Conservation Development Act, which is why we have an energy code for our buildings that's unique, once again, from the other 49 states, which have a different array of codes that they follow. But we have our own unique energy agency, and it is the most advanced, largest staffed energy organization in the world. I mean, it is amazing the energy codes that come out of this organization, just a sheer number of people who are working on things. So, and we all pay a significant, I don't know, $2-3 fee, chunk of money to fund research in California. No other state collects. We also have this amazingly $120 million of research money gets thrown out the door every year from the state. No other state has that. We find out things first, for better or worse, faster than the Department of Energy frequently, because we have more energy related building energy related staff. So it is. So conservation is the only way we can buy a barrel of oil for a few dollars. Jimmy Carter was saying this because the oil embargo of 1974 and then the conflict with Iran in 1979, the hostages that were taken, the 200 hostages that were taken, I think, in Iran. He comes into office during a serious depression and an oil shock and electricity shock because almost all of the electricity being made in our country at the time was fossil fuel based and most was oil. So electricity prices themselves also went up fourfold in 1974, and they also jumped again in 1979 because there was a contraction of the oil supply with the conflict with Iran. And he's like, hey, just so you know, this is the cheapest possible thing is conservation. And he's standing in front of the first solar thermal array that's making hot water. It was installed on the roof of the White House. So then you're welcome to ask questions, anything you want to talk about solar hot water. It's not a technology that's really being used these days much. Not that it isn't, but in northern latitudes where we don't have the same amount of sunshine every day, its variability of energy supply it caused some challenges where you can dump extra electricity into the grid or into batteries or whatever. You can't dump extra hot water, so you have to otherwise it blows up the system, it gets too hot. So you have to have some way you have to make a system smaller than it'd be ideal, solar thermal, compared to electric systems where there's still places to put the electricity in. You can turn on lights someplace or turn on your air conditioner someplace. Like electricity is very fungible. You can do all sorts of things with it. Not so much so with hot water. So then this is another big deal law, the 2006 California Global Warming Solutions Act. So this is uh, Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? A Republican governor who came in after another California oil shock, the Enron scandal of 2000, when they pretended they couldn't deliver gas, and they taught a whole bunch of other utilities like Duke to not give us gas in a sort of pretend way, and it drove up electricity prices again. To We are still paying crazy bills even from then. I mean, normalized high electricity prices in California. Utilities did because of that, which was a scam. And that scam, by the way, was facilitated by deregulating our utilities. Now we have regulated utilities and they scam us in different ways. The ones that are Wall Street owned, the ones that are civically owned, like all of our municipal utilities, they have electricity prices that are like the rest of the country. Investor owned utility land, they have the highest electricity prices in our nation. SoCal Edison, San Diego Gas and Electric, which is owned by a gas company, PG&E. So all of that, we did set up a goal then to make all electric homes the code by 2020. It's explicitly written in there, zero net energy. This is the beginning of my career because the next year, um, Bush signs into law the Improving Fuel Economy, Reducing Oil Dependence, Energy Independence and Security Act of 2007, which is when we first got our solar tax credits, back when solar was $10 a watt as opposed to 30 cents a watt right now, buying a solar panel. So huge cost reduction since then with investment into research, into mass manufacturing. Now, there's Nancy Pelosi. Of course, this is once again a bipartisan. I just want to point this out that all of our huge successes, all of them, have been bipartisan. When there was a Republican governor and there was a democratically controlled Senate. So one group got to make policy, the other group got to sign off on it and negotiate over how it would work. This is Senator Fran Pavley. She's the principal author of this, the first of the important climate laws in California, the one that really set all sorts of goals that other laws implemented. Similarly, this came out of Nancy Pelosi's house. Just like give credit where credit's due, Affordable Care Act. So 2017 Tubbs Fire. This is the beginning of our fire change season. My mother-in-law died in the Santa Rosa Tubbs Fire, and that really changed everything in my life, of course, you can imagine. And that led me to hire lawyers to try to help Berkeley, or any city actually, and many cities have passed complete bans on gas, not just in California, but it's spread around the country. There's like 90 something cities and counties who have passed ordinances and laws. So sort of I try to transmute, always in my life, try to transmute grief into action. Action is the antidote for despair, is the quote. And so I continue to think that, like, that's, if I get upset and sad, I try to listen to that and then do something. Sorry, it's getting a little glary and sunny in here. I don't have a, let's see if I can do that. Stand here for you. Who cares? You don't have to look at my face. We're looking at slides. Okay, so here we have the next big things that are happening this year is that CARB and the California California Air Resources Board is CARB. The Bay Area Air Quality Management District is BACMUD, and they are both setting policies this year to phase out the sale of gas appliances and gas everything. First, we're starting with water heaters and space heating systems. In 2027 is water heaters, 2029 space heating systems. CARB is considering adopting that statewide. The South Coast Air Quality Management District is also setting similar standards right now, but BACMUD gets credit for leading. And that BACMUD is somewhat unique in that everyone who serves on BACMUD is an elected official. And most of those elected officials had already passed gas bans before in their cities, before they then have set the nation's leading policies on phasing out gas appliances, which are called zero NOx, because you in San Jose, with some of the worst air quality in the nation, you're inhaling NOx, which really are like caustic on your lungs. They burn your lungs. You can't smell it, unfortunately, because gas stoves emit so much NOx that you're essentially smoking cigarettes when you're cooking in front of a gas stove. That's what all the medical research, going back to the 1970s now. Yeah, it's true. BACMUD nor CARB are including stoves yet. It is Bacmud is only doing water heaters and space heating systems, right? Like I was saying. And the CARB, though, is at the direction of the governor. And Governor Newsom has said by 2035, he wants to have a carbon neutral California. And he made that declaration during the fire seasons of, I think, 2019 or 20. Every time our state catches on fire all summer long, or Canada does, or, as we essentially are going through a gigantic drying out and climate changing, right, process in which the existing vegetation burns. And California is finally trying to learn from the indigenous nations of this year. There's an announcement that we're starting to do controlled burns finally. I took classes in college on this topic, and up here is where we still have tribes that get to burn their land, which is the way to prevent bigger fires. um, Basic thing that our Forest Service has not understood until maybe now-ish as an organization at both the state and federal. And you're saying, Anonymous, you're saying, I'm guessing the Bacmud rules didn't include gas cooktops and stoves because of the backlash that it would receive. That's at least one reason, but it's also true that 90% of the gas that's in someone's house is being burnt in the water heater and the space heating system. Those two combined are 90%. So if you're going to go after the quantity, then that's where you're going to go. And that is going to radically change the gas sales and incentivize people to completely get rid of gas, because gas prices naturally go up as people ask for less. Bulk sales are what keep prices lower. So this transition gets accelerated in almost an exponential way. And as San Jose is doing leadership work that's trying to do, teaching people, providing incentives, getting people in the lowest income households served first. This is the way that you make sure that everyone gets there on time. And this has been the established way of doing it now since the 1930s. Our nation understands that we have to go for the people who don't have it first, make an agency and people who are responsible for it to make sure it happens. Because if you don't, it actually slows everyone down, raises everyone's prices. If everyone participates and we have a nation that's fun. If we didn't have electricity in between California and New York, how much fun would that be? Really? You know? Let's give some credit to the rural electrification administration, and every other government who takes the job seriously. So how likely are the Bacmud rules to survive any legal challenges given the overturning the Berkeley electrification mandates for all new homes? 100% likely, because they have a different legal system we do here in California. Because our laws say that NOx is a regulated chemical in our atmosphere, and we have the dirtiest air in the nation, once again, with the highest rates of asthma and cancer related to poor air quality. And it's only gotten worse with the fire season. Problem we made for ourselves is a state with the #1 gas connections. Number one of people are connected to gas. The #1 sale of gas per household. We consume more gas in California than any other household in the nation. Think about that. So in that world that we live in, we also have this regulatory system to address this insane amount of air pollution, and it's been legally tested over and over and over. Granted, federal legislation has given us waivers to do this. So any executive, like last time Trump tried to waive this, that's not an easy thing to do. It ends up in court for a long time, et cetera, et cetera. But elections matter. So, we had our elections in California. We use the regulatory authority that we have within Bacmud to say no more water heaters, no more space heating systems for sale. Not that you can't have them, you just can't get a new one. Just like right now, we have low NOx in Texas, low NOx, interestingly, and no NOx, or an ultra low NOx here in California. And Bacmud already only sells ultra low NOx, is what you're supposed to be getting. Especially also South Coast Air Quality Management District, ultra low NOx. This is no NOx. That's the regulatory authority, no NOx appliances, no nitrous oxides, the things that burn your lungs. California Air Resources Board is using greenhouse gas exemptions. We are allowed to regulate greenhouse gases at the state level. So that's how all things. And CARB, by the way, is going through so many regulatory proceedings. This is for semi-trucks. This is for cement factories. This is for smelters. This is for apartments. This is for universities. Everything is getting its gas shut off by 2035, or we're growing so much more forest that that's part of our carbon neutrality. keep in mind, the fires since 2017 have wiped out all of the greenhouse gas savings that we've accomplished since 2003. So us burning up our forests through poor forest management, not doing controlled burns in the winter, but just gigantic hot fires all summer, that our practices have erased all of our climate change ambitions, our leaders in the nation, which is why smart people who pay attention to how people succeed, like forest management from indigenous people who've lived here for 10 to 30,000 years, according to 23,000-year-old footprints over in the White Sands Desert. So people who've been paying attention for a long time on how to deal with forests say, oh, you should burn it in the wintertime. And we're just starting that this year so we can get back on top of it. But a growing forest is the only way that we get to have carbon offsets in our state. So other than that, that's the only way we really keep the gas on after 2035 is growing forests or shutting it all off. That's the regulatory framework that we're in right now. Just, if you don't understand, now you understand. If you don't know, now you know. That's what we're doing. So, because the governor said so for the state, and our elected officials have said so for various regions of California, with the dirtiest air in the nation. Look what you have here. This story is about how without look in California, right? It's 8% all electric housing, and next to us in Arizona, it's 40%. This is because we have been an oil state. This is because we've gotten confused over the years, like the oil shock of 2001, which was just a scam, right? People went to jail. Like one guy committed suicide, Skillings, killed himself over at Enron, rather than go to jail. And Kenneth Lay, remember, he died just before he was supposed to go to jail, and everyone's like, did he really die? They cremated him so fast. Where is he living? But I think he's dead. So anyway, remember that 2000, 2001? So we are the worst in the nation, essentially, particularly given our climate. We could be all electric very easily, just like Arizona, Texas. Florida is 77%, also because they have high water tables, can't deliver gas pipes. Hawaii, 72%. The only gas they have is stuff that's delivered by boat from the mainland. So this is a natural expression of the technologies of our era up until 2009, when computers got added to heat pumps to make them work in cold climates. Because like Wisconsin, where I'm from, yeah, it makes sense, 13% it's all electric, because you're running electric resistance, like toaster elements, basically all winter if you're all electric, or you have a ground source heat pump. Those have worked forever. Those have worked since the 1930s, I should say, technically. Thank you, the Swiss. Swiss, during the war and the lead up to it, invested heavily in understanding how heat pumps would work with their hydro dams. So peace helped invent and war. But the effort for not being involved in war is what created heat pumps, to use local energy up in the mountains in Switzerland, water-based heat pumps and ground source heat pumps. So air source heat pumps, of course, are breweries, like I mentioned. People who wanted to keep beer cold get credit for air source heat pumps. So this is where we are, state of affairs. The South leads. If you want to figure out how to do all electric housing, go to the South. Very sophisticated in all electric design there. Here in California, we do not know what we're doing. Our engineers, our building architects, our building officials will fight you up until just a couple of years recently. They've been fighting you if you're trying to do all electric. They thought it was illegal, which it's not. It never was. But they would say that, a building official. So this is, if you're going to invest in new electricity delivered to your house, that 200 amp service that was asked about earlier, this is a great slide for you, because I want you to see all the red things that you pay for when you get a 200 amp service and you're starting with 100 amp. And the blue things are what everyone pays for. It's rate based. So how much is this cost? Well, it's kind of 50-50. So everything that the homeowner pays, society is also paying. All the rest is paid in bills for you to get a thicker wire delivered to your house. So the homeowner pays $2,500 minimum. You're lucky if you got that number. You can get it though. But up to $30,000, not so lucky. You have an underground wire already and you have to trench to dig it up. You have poor service in your area, so that there's a bucket transformer that you're going to have to pay for a disproportionate amount because you're the person who triggered the transformer upgrade. They try to do that. So unexpected costs and delays, time delays happen more than half the time. We worked on this question. We asked essentially electricians throughout the state. We got hired by the utilities to figure this out, because utilities, PG&E specifically, figured out in about 2017, 2018 that they should be endorsing all electric. Up to that point, their gas vice president would fire anyone on the electric side who tried to advocate for all electric design. And I got actually like yelled at once at a conference in 2016 for trying to ask someone from PG&E about this in front. He was like a boss person, a senior researcher, and his junior staff person yelled at me for almost a solid block while I walked away from her. "You're gonna get us all fired," she was saying at me. It was like, sorry, I'm really sorry about that. She was really upset. So that was the rules, firmly enforced at PG until 2018. Couldn't talk about it. Now they've been hiring Redwood Energy and other organizations to try to help them figure out how to do all electric design. It's been quite a change, just to let you know, because I've been doing this since 2007. There's a long time. I couldn't get rebates or incentives or help or talk with anyone, ask questions at a conference. So is 100 amps enough power? Yes, for 99% of households, and that last 1% doesn't need to use that much power. They could just get something changed, some new appliance, get rid of their electric resistance dryer and put in a 120-volt heat pump dryer or a condensing dryer, just one little thing. Spend $700. You don't have to go to past 100 amps. Here you're seeing in blue, these are gas electric hybrid homes, and this is their peak over the course of 15 minutes in SMUD territory. Great. SMUD has a lot of all electric homes there to study. And then in orange, that's the peak for all electric homes. And these are existing homes that have electric resistance space heating or electric resistance water heating. They don't even have heat pumps, which use 1/3 or 1/4 or 1/5 as much electricity, both at peak and overall. So this is the existing, not super efficient housing stock. And then none of them, or almost none of them, 99% of them are not going past 100 amps. So these are some of the ways that you can avoid that. I'm going to walk you through a little bit of that just real quickly because it's on everyone's mind. And these are cheap ways like NeoCharge or Dryer Buddy or Simple Switch. This is where you can plug two high power, high amperage devices into one outlet. It'll essentially, it's called a transfer switch. And I think in 1919, Berkeley had a humongous fire because of gas burning lamps. And they passed an all electric code that Berkeley was like the first in the nation to have an all electric code, but it was in 1919. I swear to God, not 2019, where they passed the next one. It was because of a huge fire. And you can still find transfer switches with these, because people only had 30 amps, not the 100 amps that was coded in 1962. And they had to have an all electric home. It was being built new. And you can find those houses still with built in transfer switches to say, this device gets to work, and it's the one that's prioritized. And this is the other one, and it's not as prioritized. So you want to turn this one on, it just transfer switches. And they would do it manually, but now all these ones do it automatically, where one outlet is for the thing like, you want your electric stove to work, right? I'm going to show you this in a second. And your water heater, your pump water heater, you also, that's got a lot of storage in it. If it turns off for 10 minutes while you're cooking, that's fine, that kind of thing. KK. You say, what is a good load split share solution to add mini splits to avoid an upgrade to two 50 amp panels supporting an existing electric range hood, garbage disposal, microwave? To add a mini split to avoid an upgrade. Got it. Okay, and you have a 50 amp service or a 50 amp panel? Two 50 amp panels? Not exactly sure what your total combined amount of power is, but your question, your mini split, I work closely with NeoCharge, and I think Simple Switch is an excellent manufacturer of products as well. I know someone who has a Dryer Buddy, they like it. Thermalec is kind of a big deal brand name. Yeah, there's some things. I'm not here to specifically tell you which one, but I can tell you some things. Like you can get NeoCharge and Simple Switch on Amazon. Get them, and they're well supported. The number of these people, like those are kind of the two big names I'd say, but although Thermalec is huge. So let me show you this, because dryers. I'm focusing on dryers because it's hardly, who cares? Like a laundry dryer. You should think about this. On the left-hand side, this is a resistance dryer. or a hybrid heat pump dryer, which I think is also, it's the same thing. They take 30 amps. 30 amps is the same amount of power for a level 2, like a fast EV charger in your house. And these two things, you don't need to have, well, you don't really need to have either, to be honest. You can have a level 1 charger for your EV, and that takes care of almost everyone's commuting every day. But you definitely don't need to have electric resistance dryer anymore. You can get a rapid high temperature heat pump dryer that still uses what you see in the middle here, like 1800 watts, which you can plug into any outlet. You can get condensing washer dryers. I have one that's at 1400 watts. The heat pump ones are the newer ones. Condensing dryers technically are an electric resistance dryer that has some efficiency measures worked into it to get the liquid that's going out to condense. Like, you know, sort of a, it's not quite a heat pump, but it has a lot of that cycle built into it for efficiency. So these are sub panels, and you might want to consider this, I think, for your situation. You asked about a circuit splitter, but I think this is the scale of solution you're looking for. I think you should take one of those sub panels that you have that's 50 amps and put in something like a lumen. I actually don't know if there's any other sub panel other than a lumen to recommend, to be honest. But lumens, what they can do is they essentially take your whatever circuit you have, and if you want, you can go up to 6 times as much power. So you have like 50 amps there, but you could kind of load it up to, um, well, I think how this works is 50, you could get it up to 150. But each circuit, you could have up to 6 things loaded. It's a little complicated, but to say, basically, your 50 amp service could act like 150 amps. Safely, you'd probably never notice it because as I pointed out, homes, actually, let me just show you that again, because your house, let's say you have a 50 amp service. Okay, so this is in kW, so not white. No, this is an amperage. Oh, good. Okay, so 50 amps right here. See where my arrow is pointing in between 48 and 50? See that? So everyone on the left-hand side of where my arrow is an all-electric home that didn't go past 50 amps ever. In the whole year, never happened. So if you have something like a lumen sub panel and some efficiency, you will never go past 50 amps. The sub panel will turn something off if that ever were to happen, but even without it, you probably will never have it happen. So yeah, so sub panel is just basically a safety feature to make sure it can't happen in case you're just like part of that small percentage somehow. So sub panels that are that will turn something off for a few minutes, well, usually like 15 minutes. Here is the whole house version of that. Span has one, Coben has one. It's called the Coben Genius Span panels. EcoFlow has one. You can check those out. Those actually only $1,000, or at least expensive, made by a large Chinese battery manufacturer. So they've made a smart panel. This here can once again choose which things stay on if in the rare chance that you actually went past your 100 amps. And Span, by the way, makes now a 60 amp version of this. It's for the whole service of an apartment, because apartments frequently have 60 amp services while houses have 100. So yeah, in these cases, they have it set up so 100 amps can support 400 amps of loads, which is almost impossible to do. I mean, it's almost impossible to even find that many things to plug into a house. I'm including like arc welders and swimming pools and fast EV chargers. Like, it is, how do you use 400 amps in the real world? They can show you graphs that no one does. I have big studies that I'll show you Steve of HEA later. Steve and Lisa, they have worked with PG&E for quite a while, and they've just demonstrated that even 400 amp homes just are not getting past 100 amps. Okay, so KK, you had a question. Can Simple Switch support 2 appliances with different loads? For instance, a 40 amp and a 20 amp mini split. You know, and Simple Switch can't, but you know who can? NeoCharge. NeoCharge is set up uniquely among these so that both things can operate at the same time. And it's regulating, like let's say you have the larger of the two is 40 amps. Okay, so you get a 50 amp version of theirs, or you get a 40 amp version, I should say. You get a 40 amp version because they sell them like 30, 40, 50. Get a 40 amp, plug both your things into it. So you have a 40 amp device going in on one side, and you have a 20 amp device going into the other side. Your 40 amp device which maybe that's your stove, right? Your range. Actual stoves rarely go past 2800 watts. So basically 10, 12 amps. It's a 40 amp stove. It just doesn't get used past about 12 amps, even with the oven running at the same time as the induction ranges or electric resistance ranges on a day when you're cooking three things and it's Thanksgiving. Like, it just doesn't happen. That's not how the stoves work. That's not how cooking works. I don't know what to say. I've studied hundreds of houses now with electric stoves, and that is just how it is, including my own, including like this. So yeah, plug your stove into the same outlet with a neocharge as your mini split, and your 40 amps will almost certainly never be exceeded by either of them combined being used, because the stove is going to be 12 amps at peak and your mini split at peak is going to be 20 amps. That's 32. You have a 40 amp circuit and you'll probably never notice ever. It sounds like you'd want to set it up so you cook instead of air conditioning or heating for whatever 15 minutes, because people the maximum most people cook is 45 minutes in a day, and that's like large farm worker family households that we have studied. So by the way, it's so much glare that I'm just going to turn off my camera. There's no point. There you go. So you can look at my picture. So that I think that's a great solution, is to consider looking at the, not the simple switch, but the neo charge, because it's set up for what you're asking for. Simple switch is simple and it just is one or the other. And you don't need that because you have more than enough power at that 40 amp circuit for both. Anonymous attendee, you said you showed a SPAN smart electrical panel a couple of minutes ago, right? You're going to mention the price for one of those? Yes, $2,500, I think, right now. It started at $3,500 and the price has dropped. I don't know what a Genius goes for. It's in Canada and I haven't really seen them much down here, because SPAN, I think, is out of San Diego. So it's a little more local in California. And the $1,000 buy them online is the EcoFlow. So this is the most expensive way to heat a house, is to do a radiant floor. It's about 2 to 3 times more expensive than using ductwork or ductless mini splits. What these things look like is these boxes. What they're doing, the one on top, the GeoCool Nordic, these are all ground source heat pumps, and they're running tubes of liquid down into the ground, either propylene glycol or water, and they're picking up heat or dumping heat in air conditioning season into the ground, and they're very efficient year round. And so they've always been used in Canada, still to this day, used in very northern parts climates where people wanted to have an all electric home, and which has always been a thing. Keep in mind, people have been pushing that idea since the 1920s, back when it was required by Berkeley as code. Because there's been a terrible gas fire back in the day when people had gas fire lights. When electric light bulbs came in, there's so many lives were saved. People's homes and kids are dying all over the place because of gas lighting. Ugh. So the American Gas Association was founded to stop electric light bulbs, by the way. The AGA, very powerful organization. All the gas companies, including like San Diego Gas and Electric and PG&E, belong to the American Gas Association. And they were founded to stop electric light bulbs from becoming code, which they are now, but they were not code required until like the 1930s. Yeah, because that's when other homes finally got, people used to use like lanterns in the 1930s in rural areas, gas lanterns. So anyway, here we have air source heat pumps, much less expensive to install than a ground source heat pump. But I'll say it again, radiant floors are also a very expensive way to heat and cool a house. But air source heat pumps and ground source heat pumps, air source just means it's a fan inside that's blowing air through it, and that's how it's either picking up heat from the air or dumping heat during air conditioning season into the air. Air sources are just a big fan. The main thing about them is you have to get ones that are reasonably quiet, because fans are noisy or not, depending upon the investment in the fan, not how big or small it is. Just it's all about how good a fan it is. The blades, the motors, all that kind of stuff. The lubricants. Here is a way to use water with an air source heat pump. A lot of people in San Jose with Eichler homes will be familiar with this. You have radiators or radiant floors. These are low temperature radiators, and they're designed to work with air source heat pumps and ground source heat pumps that don't heat up water much hotter than like 130, 140 degrees. And water in radiators doesn't have to be any hotter than the air around it. Like 80 degrees in the wintertime, gets you a house that's like 72. And it's just like, it's warm. It's always keeping your house warm. So these are all radiators designed for that. They have very thin sheets of metal in there to have lots of surface area to dump heat, compared to old radiators, which are like big chunks of metal and are, lots of, not much surface area compared to the amount of water that's inside. These ones, the thinner, the little tiny fins, the more you can get rid of the heat or chill things, depending upon the design. I wanted to encourage you to consider 900-watt heat pump water heaters. Rheem has one, A.O. Smith has one, State has one, 5 different manufacturers. I just learned this back in February. I went to a conference. Was that February? It was March, whatever. I went to a conference, Hot Water Forum, and now 5 manufacturers are coming out with them or have them out. And A.O. Smith's is excellent because it has an electric resistance element that's just tiny, a 900-watt element, so that if it's cold in San Jose, which happens, it gets below 35 every once in a while, it'll still keep the water hot. The Rheem ones here, they don't have any electric resistance backup. So they're a good one if you have a basement, if you have a water heater tank inside your house, all those kinds of things. Rheems are great for that, but they're not great for an outside closet. On the right-hand side, this is also 900 watt. This is great for any climate. This is using CO2. It's 4 times as expensive, but it's because it's producing 4 times as much hot water per hour. This is designed for big sitting tubs. This is a luxury product, but it's only 900 watts. So the one on the left, this is for households that have bathtubs and showers. The one on the right, this is for people who have sitting tubs. This is for people who, have one of those big eggshell tubs, like a big tub. And that's because these are made in Japan, where people have big tubs, big Japanese sitting tubs in the home. Everyone takes a shower first. Then everyone gets into this gigantic tub one at a time, or maybe 2 at a time, whatever. But big tub. That's how the tradition works. And these were invented to replace propane because it's so expensive. Propane's the same price as gasoline for your car, 10% less expensive, but essentially the same price. Very expensive fuel source. So all over Japan, people in the cities, they have access to natural gas that they've made from coal. It's not really natural gas, it's a similar chemical, because Japan has a lot of coal, not much natural gas, but some, which is methane. Anyway, so these were invented to get rid of propane, but they're amazingly energy efficient. They use half as much energy as the Rheem tank or the A.O. Smith. All these tanks over here, they use a refrigerant called R134A. It's basically a little fossil fuel. It's something that boils at low temperature. On the right-hand side, CO2. Okay, on the left-hand side, it boils at negative 50 Fahrenheit, I think it is, negative 50 Fahrenheit. The one on the right, this boils at negative 110 Fahrenheit, which means you can absorb heat from the environment no matter how cold it is outside. Even on the South Pole, you can still heat water with these. Anonymous attendee, you say, hey, heat pump water heaters require 1,000 cubic feet of space for air circulation. Sort of, not really. So that's not all true. So let me give you current correct knowledge on the one. So you can put an air source heat pump water heater like this into an unvented closet. I've done it on accident. It'll double the amount of energy that it uses over the course of a year. That's the worst case scenario, is an accident, right? It's like one of the first projects I'd done, and they didn't do the right design, and it was just like, oh my God. So I got to study them compared to other ones. The best situations, we put them into a garage, which has the 1,000 cubic feet that you're talking about. And that garage, that was a little bit better than even it was designed, that's about the best condition, is to put them in a hot garage in the summer. But in the wintertime, a garage is cold. It's a little dicey there, but it all works out. Garages were the best situation. In between, you can put one of these into an interior closet in your house. And let's say that its best efficiency is a 3.3 coefficient of performance. That is the maximum it does, period, in best conditions. If you put it into a closet in your house with a screened door, louvered, that's what I mean to say, a louvered door, either a louver at the bottom and a louver at the top, or a fully louvered door, or if you put it in a closet, but you put a vent at the bottom of the closet and then a vent at the top of the closet, not the door, but now just like little vents in the wall, essentially. All of those those are all only reducing its performance by 10%. So you go from a 3.3 down to like a 3.06 or 2.95, depending upon the strategy. So yeah, you can put them in just a closet that you can squeeze it into. Like if this tank is 21.34 inches and you need an extra 6 inches for this type, the ream, because they have side connections for your plumber. Okay, so now you have a 28, 29-inch closet you need for that tank on the left-hand side. The A.O. Smith tanks, they're 26 inches, but they have top connections, so you can squeeze them into a 26-inch wide closet, and the plumber can do everything on top, and you set up the venting with the louvered door. You tilt the tank so that one side of the venting is facing that louvered door for sure. The other one has a fan that goes out the top. So one side facing the door, one side just the top just going up to the ceiling. And that is a very high performance situation, honestly. And it provides some free air conditioning for the house. Ideally, you have it in the kitchen or in a closet. And A.O. Smith is very quiet. LG is a very quiet heat pump water heater that you put in a closet. So hopefully that answers your question. By the way, you're totally accurate to guidance from say 10 years ago, but there's been a whole bunch of field research and science that's published in the last few years that have continued to explain how to do it just right. So there, you get the most current information. I study these things like a maniac and have been for a long time. So I'll keep on asking me questions. I'll nerd out. Okay, anonymous attendee, you say, do you recommend moving up to a larger capacity heat pump water heater, larger than your existing gas water heater? I've read that you should move from like a 40-gallon gas water heater to a 50-gallon heat pump water heater. No, I don't recommend that. Um, Other people do, but I am one of the most knowledgeable people about how people actually use their heat pump water heaters. So what I would say is that um, a one-person household doesn't need anything more than a 40-gallon tank unless they have a large bathtub habit, right? That's the only real situation. Bathtubs are usually 35 to 40 gallons full, like the ones that are in a shower tank, and they're about 60% hot water. So, I mean, you're looking at in the range of like 15 to 20 gallons of hot water out of a 40-gallon tank, just fine. So normal use for 1 to 2, even once you get into 3 people, then you need a 50-gallon tank. There are some 3-person households and not others. Once you get past 3 people, 4 people, 5 people, 6 people, 7 people, all of those should get an 80-gallon tank. Because what we found watching that is that if you have like 4 people taking showers in a row on a Saturday while someone's also washing the laundry after everyone's been exercising and playing and getting everything dirty and it's the weekend, then you can run out of hot water with a 50-gallon tank or a 65-gallon tank with 4 or more people. Then you should probably have an 80-gallon tank. However, that is for you never, ever run out of hot water. I grew up with a 40-gallon gas tank, and my family of 5 people, well, 6 people when my half brother was visiting, we ran out of hot water all the time. Gas, water heater, Schneeder. That is no good, and in frequent cold showers. So I'm not saying like 40-gallon gas water heater is some sort of miracle product. I'm saying a heat pump water heater does a perfect job for 1, 2 people, and often 3 people, but you should probably have a 50-gallon tank for 3 people. So you never have a situation of running out of hot water. My affordable housing clients all have a different opinion on this. So they do this at mass. And so some of them are like, we don't care. Everyone gets a 50-gallon hot water heater. And that is a comparable experience to having a 40-gallon gas water heater, where sometimes you run out. If you have a big household, you're doing a bunch of hot water demands, sometimes like 2% of the time, up to 5% of the time, you're going to run out of hot water. And so that's what they do. Doesn't matter if it's a 3-bedroom apartment that has 5 to 6 people living in it. There's a 50-gallon tank. You have to just deal with normal life. So I've explained ideal. You'll never run out of hot water if you follow the advice I just explained, according to all the field research I've done where actual householders studied. We're not never, but it looks like never according to the data. People are different from the averages or even the extremes that we study with small populations. Hopefully that helps. Okay, hopefully that answers your question. And on the right-hand side, the Sanco 2, if you want to not spend, say, like in San Jose, your average price for a water heater is about $5,500 for these heat pump water heaters to get installed. And that ranges between $3,500 and $45 and $55, right? $5,500 to $6,000 is what the average is. And then we see $7,000, $8,000, and like 10 and 15. And like, what? You guys live in Silicon Valley, so I'm just telling you, if you want to get a competitive bid, it should cost in the range of $5,500 or less, is what those cost. On the right-hand side, the Sanco, because it produces 4 times as much hot water and has a special tank and it's an import from Japan, that's not $6,000. That's more like $15,000 to $20,000. And like I said, that's for your really fancy water heater. If you were to get you have the same goal, but you can't fill one of those sitting tubs. You can't fill one with a 40-gallon gas water heater or even an 80-gallon gas water heater. I've seen that. Nor can you necessarily fill them even with electric resistance 80-gallon water heater. I've seen that too. Those eggshell things are so big. Frequently, homes just they have to get like a commercial grade, not residential grade. This product here on the right is commercial grade. We use it in apartment complexes. They last 20, 30 years. So if you want to spend some money because you have a situation that calls for it, Sanco 2 is the best water heater in the United States, period. Now, yeah, it's just it. 30-gallon gas stove replaced. So I want to show you, this is an example. You got a gas stove, you have to get a building permit, unless you're running any electrical wire to it. You can run 120 volt. If we do this in my house, we just have countertop induction, and countertop induction is what I've been cooking on since my mother-in-law died. Um, yep. So I just pulled the gas stove out of the house because I had one of these like fancy gas stoves, an antique in the 1950s, and I couldn't afford something like that. Uh, I had like, three. Sorry. Hey, no. Sorry. Um, so the okay, got a little distracted there. She was making a serious situation. Okay, got the kid situation dealt with. She's going back to her mom's house. All right, now calm down. Situation's over. Gas stove on the left-hand side. You take that thing out. You pretty much need to run a 240-volt line to it. In the current market, the only thing you'd sort of get would be a Channing Street copper 120-volt big stove, unless you do countertop induction. In that case, you can go on to Amazon and get a chef top for 130 bucks. That's what I've been cooking on for years. I've tested all the 2-burner induction ranges out there, and Chef Top's 2-burner induction range is the quietest and has load balancing and everything. Basically, you just cook everything on outlets on the kitchen circuits. I've seen that in hostels, like youth hostels, where they've got a whole bunch of different cooking stations. I found it to be very effective, honestly, to have 2 cooking stations in my house. One uh, one induction range on one and the other 2-burner on the other circuit, so that not overloading individual circuits. And that means there's 2 cooking stations. It's very pleasant. It's easy when you have a whole bunch of kids and everyone's cooking food. I've got like a ranch here. Sometimes there's crazy stuff being cooked. So it's nice to have 2 cooking stations. 120-volt dryers. I've been talking about these a bunch. Now I'm going to show you. Um, Here you have, on the left-hand side, a stackable ventless electric heat pump dryer. Ventless is one of the words that get used for both condensing and heat pumps, but you want to look for heat pump. Heat pumps use the least amount of energy, and it's the most efficient. That might use a third or fourth as much energy as an electric resistance dryer. And sometimes heat pump dryers take longer, but the new versions of heat pump dryers from LG, Samsung, General Electric, these heat pump dryers are bigger, made for the American market, like 4.5 to 5 cubic feet, and fast, almost as fast as electric resistance, but using so much less power, both like power in the moment, because you can just plug it into the wall. I showed you that graph earlier, right, of how the stair stepping down power demand. So in the middle here, this is a commercial grade electric vented dryer. So 6.7 cubic feet. This is big, but it's 120 volt. What this means is that it's going to take like 3 hours to dry stuff, but you don't have to rewire. And sometimes this is like the dryer is usually the #1 electricity using device in an all electric home. If Once you have your heat pump water heater, the 900-watt type or less, the 120-volt types, then this dryer becomes number one. So if you get, instead of getting the old-fashioned electric resistance dryers, you get one that goes slower, a 120-volt basically. It just means it goes slower. Or here is a type of electric resistance called condensing. I have this one, LG's 27-inch 4.5 cubic feet. This is how I do my laundry. Love it. Had it for years. Terrific. Just plugged it into the outlet right there. Pulled out it uses the same outlet as the washing machine essentially, because the one on the right is a combined washer dryer. And so I just take out the washing machine and I put that in, and I've got a dryer and the washing machine, and it's a great washer. If you want to line dry, uh, because the efficiency built into it to extract water is one of the best things about these 120-volt devices. They spin at high speeds to get water out better, and or the washing machine version, the washer dryer version, they spin the washing machine cycle. It extracts water at high speed. The combo products. So this combo product, you get really dry laundry out even before it goes into the dryer cycle. A lot of people are attracted to fire, and really, who isn't? And this is fun. It's my then 6-year-old, not the 10-year-old who I just had to kick out. She's slamming doors and yelling. And this is my beloved, adorable little firelight. And this is the first day that I plugged in. It was just at Christmas time. I had this little tiny Christmas tree set up on the table and such. And this is like a Hogwarts magic experience. You stick your hand into what you think is a fire. It is so convincing. It's an ultrasound that's evaporating, essentially boiling, but through vibrating the water. And so it's not hot. The vapor that comes up isn't hot, but it looks just like smoke when it's underlit by lights, either LED or halogen, both of which are, halogen's more efficient than incandescent. These happen to be halogen. It's just awesome. I just got to say, like, you can plug these into any outlet in the house. You can take out your gas insert, stick the same thing, it'll look the exact same in there, plug it in, and have you turn it on, and it'll look just like an amazingly magical fire. They come with electric resistance heaters, so you can also have hot air, like, it's a heater. You can sit in front of it, you can be toasty warm, watching a fire, having hot cocoa at Christmas time. I've done it. It's so nice. And you can also play with it. You have little kids who can stick their hands into the fire and not get burnt. And isn't that a joy? These are electric barbecues that you're allowed to have even if you live in a community with high nitrogen oxides like San Jose, where you might not be allowed to have barbecues. No marshmallows, though. It's true, but this is crazy. But I'll just tell you for a moment, if you wanted to, you could get a heat gun. I have a heat gun. These are things that you use to like melt when you're doing construction, like electric wiring and things. Or essentially, you can definitely toast a marshmallow with something that's essentially like a glorified high temperature hair dryer that you can just plug in, but they're not designed to like blow a whole bunch of air. They're designed to emit a whole bunch of heat, concentrated heat, and you can definitely light a marshmallow on fire on accident as well as just toast it. So heat gun, that's what you're looking for your marshmallows. You might like heat gun them in the kitchen or something. I don't know. Set down a towel, toast your marshmallows, have your graham crackers and chocolate in front of the fire in your house. Here's the barbecue. Go out on the patio. They're everywhere. You're not allowed to have open flames on boats, so everyone's got electric barbecue on boats. These are great for patios. They're not going to catch your apartment on fire. Backyards, they don't make smoke, although you can put smoked chips into them so you can get some of the smoky flavor if you want. Just like basically stick some mesquite twigs into it, and then you've got actual smoky fire. Weber, Kenyon, George Foreman, everybody has electric barbecues. They work great. You get the sear lines, you get the smokiness because the oil is dripping off of it and it's burning onto the direct hot heat there. So you get that. I mean, you can definitely have a grease fire on an electric barbecue. Seen that. So don't think that it's different unless you're really looking for smoke taste. Quick story. When I was a kid, we had charcoal briquettes, and my half brother Jeremy, would come in the summer times. My beloved brother Jeremy, and we would do all these fun things together because otherwise I didn't see him. He'd like give me piggyback rides. and we would love to do the barbecue together. He was 5 years older, so he's responsible for the lighter fluid, and like he's 12, I'm 7. And you know how sometimes it's really hard to get the briquettes to go unless you put a bunch of lighter fluid or you're patient. We weren't patient, we were children. So he put a bunch of lighter fluid on it while the burgers were cooking. And I vomited violently from that experience. Just barely got out of got out of the car before making the car a complete mess. But like dad had to skid to a stop and had me just yeah, and all my vomit smelled like lighter fluid. That was I have like to this very day, I can still smell all of that mess in my nose, and it's just disgusting. So I would say like, hey, it's just fine to get rid of barbecue briquettes, which frequently are imbued with lighter fluid nowadays for easy, getting them going. So your food really tastes like lighter fluid because you're burning lighter fluid. Just gas smoke. It's disgusting. So what are the electrical requirements for an electric barbecue? 120-volt, plug it into any outlet out there. You can also get 240-volt versions. It depends upon what you want, how much cooking you're going to do all at once. But like the ones I'm looking at here, these are probably both, well, I think the one on the left is a 240-volt and the one on the right is a 120-volt. So you can, because just looking at the cooking surface, all this like plastic stands and things on it, that's not what's important about the electricity demand. But you can get them in 240-volt or 120-volt, and it makes a difference in the heat of the and how much surface area you can keep really barbecue hot. Anonymous, you ask if you're using a countertop induction cooking device or multiple such devices, are you still venting them? Yes. Although a gas stove is producing as much pollution as someone smoking about 2 packs of cigarettes a day in your house. So cooking for 20 to 45 minutes a day, like everyone does, is basically like every 20 minutes is about a pack of cigarettes. And that is in terms of the nitrous oxide, the formaldehyde, the not so much the PM, that's smoke that you can see. It's all the invisible smoke because PM 2.5 and PM 210 and 7. All those things, those like fine grained smoke particles of ashy stuff that's bad for you. You don't get that much from natural gas, or for that matter, gasoline, unless catalytic converters. But anyway, but you get NOx, you get all the other ones, NOx and formaldehyde, carbon monoxide, bad stuff. But the NOx is worse. When you're cooking on an induction, you're still burning oil because cooking oil or the grease, the oil that comes out of food that you're cooking, that is part of the air pollution in your house. And you should always vent. We've studied this a bunch, and there's big spikes of indoor air pollution cooking on induction because of the oil that you're burning in a pan. Always vent. However, gas stoves are exponentially more. And I mean that literally, like you can have 40 ppm of NOx after cooking, and you can have 400 ppm of NOx on induction versus gas. It can be less extreme, but yeah, like it's way worse. So I always think like, do you really want to have like a cigarette smoker living in your house? Would you invite someone over to smoke 2 packs a day and blow smoke in the face of your dog and your baby and your grandma? Like, who is like that? So anonymous, you say if one plans to go for solar and currently the house has 100 amps, do you advise to upgrade the panel to 100 amps and go for solar? No, I would advise you stay with 100 amps. 100 amps is enough for up to 15 kW of solar. And you would connect that 15 kW, which is much bigger. Average solar array in California is 5 kW, and that was before NEM 3.0, investor-owned utilities, being insanely corrupt. I won't talk politics. I shouldn't do that. Basically, yeah, if you want to run solar directly into your panel, usually you're limited by 16 amps of the 100, which equals a 4 kilowatt system up on your roof. Most people think of solar panels in terms of number of kilowatts. The kilowatt is about 2 sheets of plywood worth of solar panels. So each kilowatt visually looks like 2 sheets of plywood of solar, right? So the average solar array in California is about 4.5 kilowatts. And you can put in that average solar array, if you down it to about 4 kilowatts up on the roof, into any 100 amp panel. If you want to put up to 15 amps, you have to insert that solar into the right behind the meter, into your service box that you own, That was one of the things that I showed you that's like red is you own the box that sits around your meter, and you can put in what's called a meter collar, fits into the same thing that you own, clips into it, and then the utility clips their meter into your little extender. And that extender, which PG&E gives away for free to households that have had power outages, and you can plug your F-150 electric F-150 into it now. They've approved that with Ford. They already make collars for generators to plug into, and they have a list of generators that can go into meter collars. It's a standard technology. The only brand that I know is Connector, DER, standing for Distributed Energy Resource. So Connect, DER, Connector. That's the meter collar that I know that's commercially available. So yeah, there really isn't a technical reason for you to go past 100 amps for, yeah, there is no technical reason to do that. So check this out. I just want to give you guys a little bit of a vision. You know, we've been very practical. This is somewhat impractical. This is a $12 million boat. I wish one of you on this call had $12 million to spend on a boat. Good for you. Congratulations, right? This is a boat that is 100% renewably powered just with the solar panels and batteries for storage. And it can go 100 miles a day across the ocean with a hot tub, a movie theater, 6 different staterooms for people to sleep in. It has supposed to be this year. We'll see. You know, one of these like essentially like a drone-like small airplane for 1 to 2 people to sit in. That's the top picture. That's not real. It's an AI generated thing. But on the middle there and the bottom, those are real pictures. That's a Works U-boat, which you drop off one side of this thing. It comes with an electric submarine for 2 people. And you know, haha, you can go down and get a champagne bottle next to the shipwreck. Very staged photo, obviously, but doesn't that kind of look cool? And then Tega, you can drop off the other side 1 to 2 of these electric jet skis, go to 0 to 60 in just a few seconds, just like a Tesla. I mean, electric battery powered snowmobiles. Tega makes snowmobiles and jet skis, and they're both just ridiculously fast. Oh, anonymous, you want a transcript of this great presentation? Well, A, it's going to be given in Spanish next, and then Vietnamese. So if you want to come back and you speak either of those languages, we're going to do it a second and third time. The Ask Maria show and the Ask Trang show. And then this is being recorded and it's being posted online. And yeah, I think Hannah is, maybe she'll explain that at the end, but it's definitely for you. So it's just a great example of what we can do technically now. This is a self-sufficient little island, essentially solar and batteries, that you can go on a never-ending trip around the planet, 100 miles a day. Sunshine is what you're working with. It's a transatlantic, 3-story tall fun boat. Now, this is my local luxury. I have a rich friend. He's an old man. He's a hardcore environmentalist. We bonded when I was like selling him chickens that we'd raised ourselves at the farmer's market. And he's like, come on, bring your kids over. They can learn how to swim at my house. So in this Google picture here, you can see the old solar hot water system that fed that into a gas boiler for the wintertime, heating the pool. It's in a greenhouse. There's a rope swing. There's banana trees. There's pineapples, like 30 pineapples. I mean, it is so tropical, awesome, flowers everywhere. It smells so good in the wintertime to walk in. It's like 80 degrees and flowers in your face in January. It's like a little Hawaii inside this thing. It's so nice. And it helped them transition to getting an AquaCal heat wave super quiet icebreaker, meaning that it works in the wintertime. I actually recently I was over, I could hear it breaking ice that was building up on the coils because it's one of the things that heat pumps have to do is water condenses on, they have to get rid of it, and you hear a little tinkling noise sometimes, depending upon the technology. Pentair, Hayward, these are all supported in the Bay Area. You can call up a subset of them who will know how to do heat pumps, and there's a guide on our website, redwoodenergy.net, under the research and publications. That's a guide just for the Bay Area of who installs heat pump pools, if you are so lucky as to have a backyard pool. So just, you know, you can find, we actually called everyone to find out who is already doing heat pumps and who supported them. And of course, it's been changing rapidly over the years as everyone in the Bay Area has been banning gas one way or another. Through REACH codes, explicit bans. San Francisco has a ban similar to Berkeley, but it was done under justifications that were not affected by the lost lawsuit. Completely different rationale, same effect though. So just to be clear, the gas bans, some of them are extinguished, some of them are not. And some of them weren't gas bans, but were strongly gas favoring. Oh, you want to know where is this? This is up here in Humboldt County, 6 hours, 7 hours north of where you're sitting, on the coast. So in the misty, foggy parts of California where the redwood trees grow the tallest, and it's cold all summer and winter, but always kind of the same cold, like, you know, 45 degrees in the wintertime, 55, 65 degrees in the summertime. It's kind of chilly. So yeah, it's wonderful to go into the greenhouse essentially any time of the year, and it's so warm in there. And it's heated by the swimming pool, which in turn is heated by the heat pump water heater. Hannah.
Hi, I just wanted to jump in really quickly because I know we're about to be at 7:30, so folks have to hop
Oh,
off. Um, that's totally
right.
fine, Sean. We can stay on if people want to stay on and ask questions, but for those that do need to hop off, I just wanted to say thank you for joining. And as Sean mentioned, we're recording all of this, so even if you have to hop off now, you'll have access to the rest of the webinar as well as everything that was just covered. We'll work on trying to get that up as soon as possible, and we'll definitely email all of the attendees and folks that registered once it's posted. So we'll keep you in the loop on all of that.
You've done a great job of asking questions. I totally appreciate that. Let's go to jump to the rebates real quick. These
Yeah,
are
rebates.
totally fair.
Good question.
So, these are just examples of houses. But now, here we go. San Jose. This is what they're doing. The incentives we have here. Hannah, why don't you speak to them? This is your thing, right?
Yeah, so I am ooh, and we got a bunch of questions, but I am not directly working on this program, but we just launched this Electric Home San Jose program, which is going to provide, as you can see, a bunch of incentives for a variety of measures. We have about $119,000 worth of incentive money right now, with potentially more available. And folks that own homes, anyone that has a home, multifamily or single family in San Jose, can apply. Yeah, you can visit that. There's the link right there. We'll include a link also in the follow-up email so you can check out and see more information. But you just need to fill out, I believe, um, like a pre-incentive application if you're interested in trying to apply or take advantage of any of these incentives. I guess it's worth noting that to qualify for any of the secondary or tertiary measures, you have to also be installing something that falls into the primary measures. But yeah, I encourage you to check out the website for more information. And we're going to cover this a bit more and have someone that's working on the program come and talk about it actually during our incentive and rebate dedicated webinar, which is happening on May 21st. So happy to
Yeah.
answer questions offline, and we'll share more information in a follow-up email.
This show, as you can tell, is dedicated to answering questions. And we are going to do it just on incentives. I'll give this thing, we'll go deep into that. And I'll also answer questions about your houses. But basically, this is what it was advertised to be. Okay, can you get incentives for induction stoves after the fact? Well, for tax credits, yes, generally you have to give in a receipt. You have to like buy it and then hand it in for your tax credit or often for your rebate. San Jose has a pre-application process, and that's often true also. But yeah, usually you can't get any money until you buy it. So that's how it goes. I can't get any money back. And incentives are generally designed to be 15 to 30% of the total cost, just so you know, they have a realistic expectation of what an incentive does. It's supposed to like make it a little bit easier for you to spend most of the money to do it. Okay, so 25C is a tax credit. 25C gives you, for electrical components, right, all the sub panels we've been talking about, $600 in a year. Keep in mind, you can spend more and then carry it over in multiple years, or more, probably the smarter way to do it is just the idea that they have is you do a chunk of projects in the first year, and then the next year when you have some more money, you do a little bit more work. And that's how so many of us do our homes, is incrementally. So that's how this is designed. Every year you can, $600 for the panels, $2,000 for heat pump water heaters and space heating systems, $1,200 for insulation. Awesome. Air sealing is really the most powerful thing you can do for a home. And in Vermont and in California is going around with caulk. More important than insulation is air sealing. It means like how much times your house is dumping all the air that you've heated and cooled out the house without even worrying about insulation, just leaks. And then home energy audits, 150 bucks. 25D is just for solar panels and batteries, and essentially it's 30%. Unless you're affordable housing, then you can get up to 50%. Um, you can also get some bonuses if you get domestically manufactured solar panels. Very few of those available. Like the first plants are being kicked into gear. So pretty much just expect 30% is what you can get for solar panels and batteries. This is for EV infrastructure. So this is reserved for by climates like Cal EVBI. This is basically for low-income households. I don't know if you guys are or not. That's what I specialize in. And it's just worth noting that there's very little money left for fast DC fast chargers, and there's a chunk more left for level 2 chargers, which is really the most that most people would ever need. Bay rent incentives, those just changed. They're coming out with new incentives. So in about a half a year, I think it is, we're going to see brand new incentives for electrification, but they're really rethinking everything, and they just stopped offering rebates, Bay rent. So that's where you're at. Just a little bit of stuff: duct sealing, attic insulation, wall insulation, air sealing, which I'll say again is the most cost effective and really most effective thing you can do. Although if you have ducts, you might be leaking up to 50% of your heat out the ducts. Definitely 25% though. Going in and sealing ducts, if you have them, is a great idea. Well, you probably have them, so seal ducts. But air caulking is much cheaper and easier to do because you don't have to go up in an attic or underneath the house, just go around the windows and things. So air sealing that way is still the most cost effective, most powerful thing you can do for a house. Including downsizing heat pumps, like air sealing gets you 1/3 this. You reduce the size of a heat pump by 1/3 amount of, and therefore the money. Induction stoves, Bay rent is putting 250 bucks out there. Heat pump dryers, another $250. Okay, so this is now another case study. And there's someone asked, like, hey, how long are you going to go? Certainly, anyone who wants to stick around, how many people do we have right now? We're at 19. I'm going to talk for another 15, 20 minutes. You're all welcome to have your evening. But I'm just going to try to do some fun case studies if people are interested. So, this family here retrofitted their home in phases, used the federal and Bay rent incentives. They want to do climate change, resiliency, cost savings, all those things. And you can see here, you got the EV charger, they got the GREE heat pump air, that's for heating their house. They got the heat pump water here on the right-hand side, you got a Ream. I don't see the brand on that stove there, but that's a nice induction stove. And their point is like, take the time, plan, maximize your incentive rebates. You're going to do this probably once, replacing your infrastructure. So just, take a little bit of time. I mean, don't take forever. There's urgency. Climate change is real. That's why we have fires every summer now, right? But here's a nice cute quote. So Julie Benavente, thank you, Deputy Director of Climate Smart. She says, we love our all-electric home. The heat pump water heater is programmed to preheat during times when electricity is cleaner and cheaper. Our solar powers our home, and our electric vehicles saves money and the environment, of course, because, like 1/5 as much pollution at worst coming out of an EV, and essentially none if you're using clean energy. So induction cooktop works great. Easy to clean. That's one of the nice things about induction. It's so easy to clean. It's safe for the kids. And we feel like our heat pump space heating system makes our home even more comfortable with moderated and mild airflow. So versus blasting high heat from a gas furnace, furnaces turn on and off minimum 3 times an hour, up to 8 times an hour under normal function, and it can wake people up. And heat pumps don't ever. They just go at a very low, even rate of heating your house, and so you stop even noticing it. But it certainly doesn't wake you up. There. Thanks, Julia. Now, here we have another household, and Edward Schreiner, 2-story, 1,600 square foot townhome built in 1973. So got rid of the gas water heater from 1997. Initial quotes included significant cost work, right? But with help from Quick Carbon, wonderful company to work with. There's a number of them, Rock Rabbit AI or Zero Carbon Home are 3 that come to mind that are in business with Quick Carbon. And got rid of all the silly costs about how expensive it's gonna be. So they did blow a fuse. Hot water was out for a day. Yes, often when you replace anything something goes wrong the first day because thing installers might have an issue or who knows. You just never know. You should expect anytime you're replacing anything significant in your house that you should pay attention to it for the first couple of days to make sure everything's working, right? That's building science for you. So I don't know what that is. Notice a drop in water pressure. I don't understand how that would work other than if the new plumber installed thinner, skinnier plumbing lines. And when I'm looking at this here, I'm just noticing there's a lot of big, small, including that right there, that copper. Maybe they have skinnier pipes that reduce the flow because the plumber, but not because of the water heater. And just pointing out that they haven't saved money, nor have they cost money. It's just that PG&E's electricity rates, if you don't know, PG&E and its unions are the #1 donor to the governor. The governor personally gets to set electricity rates through his direct appointees at the CPUC. And all electricity cost increases are a result of the California Public Utilities Commission approving them, which are all the governor's appointees, including the chair, who is his energy advisor, and personally, I mean, that's the nature of an agency. That is the governor's agency. So that's how our governor gets his #1 source of donations. That's just a fact, just so you know. And if you want to pressure the governor to reduce electricity rates, he's the person who has control. That's too, also fact. So this is what one of those louvered doors looks like. I mentioned earlier for a heat pump water heater. This is a perfect installation, just the width of the closet door. It's all you need to get the water heater in there. So Edward, pardon me. He's saying the electrical work was $1,200. The plumbing work was $2,127. So that's everything. Heat pump water heater. That's a really great, affordable price. This is, I think, a pre-COVID installation because heat pump water heaters, essentially almost all appliances jumped in price by about a third. They're one of the things that drive inflation is appliance prices, and that was a great deal is because of lack of fans available internationally. Everything needs a fan to cool off. Fan prices have dropped since COVID supply chain issues, and many appliances dropped in price. But they're still not pre-COVID anymore. That's just, that's how it is. But there was a period of time in which we're seeing, things being $300 more expensive than they are right now. And the prices have dropped. So I got the louvers, I had a handyman, put in the louvers, good job. And it looks like this person spent $3,865. And I counted this up, and this looked a lot more like I got $5,700 in rebates for a $3,800 installation. That is because this plumber was fair. And he said, I bought a $1,400 water heater, and I have installed it for you over the course of about 4 hours, and I'm going to charge you $150 an hour of loaded rates, and that is a very fair price. I used to see heat pump water heaters go in for $1,800 to $2,100 all the time. Just not anymore, and not generally in San Jose, but sometimes. Oh, Hannah, yes. What do you want to ask or say?
Hi, and we have a couple more questions in the chat. Do you want to
Oh,
address
yeah.
some of those, just in case folks need to hop off? And there's actually one that I partially answered, and I just want to put out there first so that I don't forget. But someone had a question about permits. So their question is like heat pump water heater installs need plumbing work as well as electric work. Then should we apply 2 applications, one from the
Oh,
plumber and one from electrician, or can I apply and include all info? Although the plumber,
let me reemphasize this, that you do not need to do electrical work for a heat pump water heater if you get a 120-volt heat pump water heater, which is the type that plugs into any outlet. Any outlet. You can get a 900-watt heat pump water heater, and you don't have to rewire it. You can run an extension cord. That's how it is. So you don't need to do electrical work. You just go out and get a heat pump water heater. And what they do is they store water at 140 degrees and they give it out at 120 degrees. And so they have essentially a water storage heat battery built into them. That's their design. And they provide better service than a water heater that is designed to store at 120 and have an electric resistance backup element, which is the previous, and we still buy these 30 amp heat pump water heaters. And they provide less hot water during peak than these 120 volts, which are an improvement in design, storing at 140, as opposed to trying to make up hot water in the moment that it's needed, just have enough. So yeah, do not need a building permit for electricity. And then also the plumber, if you did get a 30 amp model, a plumber can run wiring for heat pump water here without having to get a new electrician there. They can run a 240 volt circuit if they choose to. That is acceptable because of the amount of wiring it is a minor amount, and plumbers can legally do that. Like it's less than $500 of labor. You can do it without a building, without a license in wiring as a plumber. That's so just so you know, your electrician, you don't need an electrician even with a 240 volt, 30 amp one. So anonymous attendee, you said, hey, most older homes in San Jose have lousy insulation. True. Don't downplay the importance of installing good insulation if you can afford it. We did can afford it, and hardly run our furnace or air conditioner at this point. Now, an important point is that you are confusing one thing. You put an insulation which created air tightening. Like you reduced the amount of air infiltration from your walls through outlets and things like that. And you got a lot of air sealing out of your insulation as well as insulation. So I did the same thing. I did a drill and fill spray foam, and it sealed up my house tight. And I didn't realize that. I then had air. I didn't really do any air sealing. I just insulated with foam, which is very good at air tightening, air sealing your house. But insulation that's batt insulation, for instance, isn't. Um, and blown insulation that's cellulose, which is wonderful for the environment. Great stuff. Please use it. That is also a good air sealer. But insulation, if you were to put batt insulation, which is what stuff people frequently think of, it has less of an impact than it appears compared to foam because of the air sealing that happens in it. So yes, go ahead, put insulation. Focus on doing something that's that does air sealing at the same time, because then you get double benefit. And but I have to say the science of it is that air sealing is more important than insulation. In if you're looking at trying to reduce the amount of HVAC load, you can do air sealing to reduce 1/3 of your peak load. You can put in insulation, of course, lots and lots and lots and lots of it to almost eliminate the heating load. You can go further with insulation, but you have to add lots and lots, like an extra 6 inches of foam on the outside of the building or something like that. So in most circumstances, it would be better to do air tightening first and foremost. And insulation, if you're doing air sealing, I mean to say, is fantastic. That's my science answer. Hope that's okay. So having solar panels in my home has been a game changer for me. Yes, everyone, even to this moment with NEM 3.0, put in your solar panels. They're size them not for everything, instead size them for self-consumption, which is in that range of 4 kilowatts, 3 kilowatts, not 9 kilowatts. If you put in that amount of solar, you get fantastic rates because you're offsetting electricity as you're using it, and you can schedule things like your EV or your air conditioning to turn on during the middle of the day when you're generating lots of electricity and get your house nice and cold, and then come home to a wonderfully chilled house, as opposed to running your air conditioner when you get home, thinking, oh, that's the way to do it, and not getting to take advantage of self-consumption of your solar. So self-consumption is a way to change lots of things, but your bills in particular. Anyway, so Sina Egger Shinnis, the supervising environmental services specialist, went on to say, not only do they help me reduce my carbon footprint, contribute to a cleaner environment, they also significantly lower my electricity bills. Amen. They sure do. So just size them for the circumstances that you're in, or learn how to self-consume. You can put a larger solar array if you charge your car and things like that during daylight hours. And so Anne, here's her electrification. I can see I think it's a Kia. Kia is putting out EVs that are bi-directional already and being used. The whole car is being used to charge the grid over in like Utrecht, Netherlands. I'd say Kia right now is the leader in bi-directional EV charging, where they charge into the grid. But this one isn't being used for that because we're just deploying those in the United States, like Decibel and Wallbox and such. So there's her countertop induction range in the lower left-hand corner. There's her heat pump water heater. That's a A.O. Smith, which I mentioned has the kind of design that's appropriate for putting a heat pump water heater outside. It needs to have electric resistance element, just a little one, 900 watts. Linda, one of your wonderful activists there in San Jose, she says, I love my heat pump in my converted garage home office. It keeps my office at Goldilocks temps, warm on cold days and cool on hot ones. The heat pump unit takes up very little space in the side yard, and the vent in this office takes up no space as is in the ceiling. So not a big space consumer. Great experience. Goldilocks, we love it. And she says, and we love our induction cooktop. It's so easy to clean, keeps our indoor air healthy, and is safe for our kids' hands and feet. So I mentioned Lisa and Steve. Love these folks. They got the first of these LG condensing washer dryers of anyone I knew, and they told me it's awesome. And then I got one, and it is awesome. Um, so they've got a NeoCharge to balance their two EVs here. So that means they're able to charge them both at like 30 or 40 or 50, or they can prioritize them or have them both going at the same time. They have here the heat pump water heater is also balanced with their stove. So this is a second NeoCharge load balancing thing. And so when they're cooking, if they're using more than the 30 amps and the water heater is running, and the water heater only runs 1 to 4 hours a day, heat pump water heater, that is the range, 1 to 4 hours a day of the fan running. So it basically, if it's even coincident at the same time, then the NeoCharge allows them to balance up to the point where maybe the water heater would be turned off for a couple minutes because someone was boiling 2 pots at once or something. So yeah, that's their house, 3,400 square feet in Los Altos Hills. This is by contrast on this 14 tiny homes that I worked on, and each of these homes has just a 60 amp service to it. And we put in a $2,000 heat pump for airspace heating. These are homeless veterans who got housed in Santa Rosa. 1/7. So these Sandcos, I use these on apartments I mentioned. So one of these goes to 7 tiny houses. I made the point, right, that this is produces a lot of hot water. And we run a manifold, so not recirculating, but directly plumbing to each of the fixtures, essentially in people's tiny houses. No one ever runs out of hot water. 7 people can easily, separate households. And then here's their countertop and cooking, like a little oven and a 2 burner. Now, anonymous, you say, we have an induction cooktop. They still get somewhat hot to the touch, right? Because the pot that you're heating heats the glass. And ours indicates when it's no longer hot and we can clean it after use. Yes. The induction cooktop surface gets hot from the pots and pans that are on, yeah, exactly. Exactly. It does get hot, but let's talk about the difference in hot. Induction cannot get hotter than about 550, but mostly they don't get hotter than 475 degrees Fahrenheit. The average induction burner won't go hotter than delivering that heat at max. Water boils at 212, right? So whatever you're doing at 450 is basically like burning things, like a steak is being burnt. It's super hot. Now, if you are using gas, at a minimum, you're putting 1400 degrees of Fahrenheit temperature to try to get to 212 or 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is most steaks, frying at 350 or sauteing or whatever, of 350 degrees of heat on the metal. So a gas and an electric resistance stoves can both deliver 1400 degrees and hotter, which will melt the pot. And gas burns at like 3400 degrees at the very tip. So people get horrible burns from super hot pots and pans that are on, or light their house on fire with gas and electric resistance, and induction cannot do that. You can't, like, if you put a paper towel on a 475-degree temperature pan, it would brown, but it wouldn't catch on fire. So it's just, you're very safe. And similarly, you touch it, it's hot, but it's not going to give you a 3-degree burn instantly like all the chefs that work in kitchens, commercial kitchens that have gas flames. So these are 100 amp service homes for up in Hoopa. It's a local reservation. The York Indian Housing Authority, neighboring tribe, they built housing collaboratively, essentially. Although Hoopa would say not so collaboratively. Anyway, these tribes, they speak different languages, literally, and so even when they collaborate, sometimes some people disagree and some people agree. They're different nations. Think of them as like France and Germany, just living shoulder to shoulder. So these wonderful all-electric homes relied upon the solar rays, and without the solar rays, the project would not have been built. They lowered the cost of electricity just enough to get the financing, like the bank loans and everything. So this project is 100% dependent on solar and being all electric to get the lowest bills, because anything else would have been propane, which is the most expensive source of energy, and the houses wouldn't have been built. That is fact. So that is the difference. Is solar plus all electric makes the lowest bills. And we finance so much affordable housing that way because with really high bills in California, solar and all electric makes really big savings, and you can you can build about 5% more apartments per apartment complex because you made it all electric and solar powered. And 5% more means you also win competitive scoring. That's a big deal. This is also the first tribal housing the state ever funded, is in 2015. And since California was the head, one of the most intensive Indian slaving states in the 1800s, keeping in mind that Virginia sent tens of thousands and essentially 5 million indigenous people in North America were enslaved in between 1500 and 1924, which is essentially when California finally made Indian slavery illegal. 1924. Well, it's the federal government. California in 1937 said you were no longer allowed to kidnap somebody and enslave them if they were Indian, which was still legal in California until 1937. I'm a historian. The last slave I can identify for sure that was held as a slave in Humboldt County in Eureka by a judge, she died in 1894, still a slave, my age, 48. And she'd been captured as a 14-year-old after a massacre of her family and kept as a slave in that judge's household the whole time. A judge supposed to enforce the law, right? Legal in Humboldt County, slavery. So anyway, I was just on an airplane all day and I'm reading the other slavery, which is all about that. So it's on my mind. Sorry if I'm getting a little intense on that. So anyway, it was great that California finally funded tribal housing with California's federal allocation of money. Even it wasn't even our own money that did it. Last but not least, if you'd like to play a game, enjoy just like the gamification of learning how to electrify your house, you can see what the benefits are of doing different measures and climate change impact at Climate Smart San Jose Challenge.org. Climate Smart SJ Challenge. And San Jose is funding this to help you sort of like make it fun, keep fun engaging. I was just meeting with the author about heat pump water heaters, make sure the pricing was accurate since it was pre-COVID pricing. So like, there's a great website to get more information. We have little booklets. This is me. This is the end, by the way. We have little booklets at redwoodenergy.net/research that were funded by the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, but principally by the Fossil Fuel Free Alliance and Menlo Spark specifically. And thank you, Diane Bailey, out there. So Menlo Spark is a primary organization that and hired us to write these books to help the Bay Area move forward on their gas bans. And so we did them on apartments and commercial buildings and retrofits of houses, and they're all free online. And San Jose, of course, has their websites you can go to learn more about electric homes, the rebates. Oh, by the way, if you're trying to find a contractor, switcheson.org. I'm on the board of this organization that creates this repository of all the contractors in California who have been participating in electrification rebate programs. So you can get an experienced contractor who has at least 2 Yelp stars and has had the person be had 2 of their references called. So that's what it means to be in the Switches On database, that we've tried to do a legitimate background check of like references and if you've done this work before you get listed as someone that you can call and get a bid from. And it's really comprehensive in the Bay Area specifically. So switcheson.org is a great place to find your next contractor if you don't know who that is, or get a second and a third bid. That's how you get your prices down low. For anyone who's got, if you're trying to electrify right now, invest money in your time and go get 3 bids or 4. And that'll dramatically lower your total cost. That's it. Thanks, everybody.
Yay!
Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for all your questions. Thanks very much.
Yeah, if anyone has any last minute questions, feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand. But
right.
I know everyone probably needs to eat or wants to chill out and watch Netflix.
My kids are bouncing in and out. They're like, "You were gone for the last 4 days, Dad." You haven't seen this. I've been waving them away left and right. 3 kids. I love them very much. Just gonna go hang out with them now.
Yeah.
Hey.
Well, thanks everyone. We'll send a follow-up email with more information, some of the information and resources we talked about today. We have a post-webinar survey that we'd totally appreciate if you filled out with feedback on the webinar. We have 4 more webinars coming up. One is on incentives and rebates. One is on how to electrify on a 100-amp panel. It'll go more in depth on those two topics. And we also are doing the Ask Sean show, but in Spanish and Vietnamese. So Ask Maria show is the Spanish version. Ask Trang show is the Vietnamese version. All super knowledgeable Redwood Energy employees or contractors. They're awesome. So we hope to see you at one of our upcoming webinars.
Yeah, Trang is an employee, and yeah, I'll be there also just to make sure that if there's any technical questions that either of them don't know. Like it'll be a team effort, even more than today, which is just me essentially and Jesse as my backup, but team effort for those. Okay.
Ooh, dark. All right. And
Good
we'll
night.
share the recordings also when they're available. We'll send an
Oh,
email.
hey, just Hannah, I need that recording right away so that Trang and Maria can watch it,
Yeah,
so that it's ready. So just say no, like send it to me as soon as you can.
we will. Yeah, we'll try to get it ready within the next couple of days.
Thank you.
I'll be in touch.
Okay, cool. Good
Okay.
night.
All
Take
right. Good
care.
night, everyone.